Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing some critiques, so let's jump in. This one's from Tessa on the Discord. I saw some older versions of this that you had, or an older version of this that you had. And it's looking a lot better. I think the character feels like, value-wise, like they're fitting into the scene much better. Now, I think there's a couple things you could do to sort of make this integrate more. I think, look at what's going on with the general lighting of the background, how overpowering this window light is coming from the outside. Generally, like even this overcast lighting, practical sources like these lamps are going to have a hard time fighting against this, huge source of light. And you can see, on everything in this scene, like you can barely feel this warm light at all. You feel it over here on the wall, but as you get further away, you don't feel it quite as much. Most of it is that, like, hard, or soft, actually, soft, really bright, overcast light coming in through the windows. So, I think in order to get your character to fit more into the scene, it needs to be reflective of that. So the first thing I would say is probably, you want to feel much more of that influence of the sun, or the sky, I mean, as a wrap around the character. So you have some already, but I think making that stronger would help a lot. Whoa, sorry. So yeah, you have some here, but I think you probably need this to be quite a bit stronger, especially if you look at how bright it is, in these areas. Making that sort of pop will help both integrate the character and also kind of separate him from the background. I think the flip side of that is, these lights, I can tell you have one that's motivating this spotlight that's supposedly overhead coming down. I do think the character is feeling a little bit like it's getting hit by too much warm light here. So it's the temperature of the light that's hitting him. The temperature seems right, it's just the amount of it, and also the quality of it, right? So the smaller your light source, which is pretty small here because they're not diffused at all, they're just, looks like bulbs. The actual light source is going to be quite small, and it's not going to be as broad and as soft as you have the warm light hitting him here. I think, playing up more of the influence of the background backlight to rim him, and then getting some indirect ambient light from, this light bouncing off of the wall behind the camera, or however you want to justify it, and then getting, I think you can have some influence of these warm lights, but getting it to be tighter and, a harder source, a smaller source, I think would really help him feel like he's part of the environment. And I think, maybe you can come a little bit darker on some of the downward facing planes, like, as his chest sort of rolls down here, maybe this gets a little bit darker. In here, maybe it's slightly darker, just to sort of integrate him. Like, look how dark these front-facing planes of everything get. He just might be getting a little bit too filled there as well. So yeah, stronger backlight, smaller source for the warm light here, and then after you do those adjustments, taking a look at, if you want to adjust some of the fill that he's getting, because it looks like kind of ambient light coming all around him, and maybe he's just feeling a little bit too flat. But yeah, I would say try to adjust this background source and the practical source first, and then see where you stand, and then you can make adjustments from there. But great job, it's really coming along. You had another one, the sunset piece. I think there's a couple things with this one that you can do to sort of help it along. I think, the first thing you need to ask yourself with any image is, where do I want the audience to look? And where is the audience looking? So in this case, my eye goes straight to here, this high point of contrast where the sun is hitting. And this might be maybe a realistic sort of place for the sun to hit. If the sun obviously is out over here somewhere, it's going to hit there. But in terms of composing an image, this sun direction might not be the best place for you to sort of have the sunlight coming in, just because there's all these leading lines for this image that point you towards the middle and kind of draw you in towards the center of the frame. I think having the lighting support that would be nice. So getting, if you're willing to sort of switch your sun direction, I think it would be interesting if it came in this way and sort of lit all this stuff up. That would kind of be supporting where your eye is kind of naturally drawn to, and then all of that, you can get some nice indirect bounce from the direct hits on the wall and the floor and these crates. That could be cool. If you do want to keep it coming from left to right, maybe this gap between the buildings could be a nice place for the sun to kind of stream in here, and you might get a nice composition here. Or if you want to keep it up there, I think it's still possible. I think maybe the elevation needs to be a little bit higher, and you need to be able to hit get more of the light in this frame, in this area of the frame, I mean. And then you have this blue sky up here. I don't feel a lot of blue influence in the shadows. I think once you get that key light, your sun sorted, which I think is the first thing you should probably mess around with more. I think from there you can try to feel some more influence of the sky on some of, especially the top planes of everything. And also, you're going to feel on the ground, and also maybe in these shadow areas as well. Right now, it's getting so dark over here, it almost looks like, there's maybe some sort of another structure looming over this, because, otherwise I would think you would feel more influences of the blue sky. Another small thing just to keep in mind, this building has two separate planes. It's turning a corner here, but it's really mushing together these two values, so it doesn't look like it doesn't look like there's a gap between the buildings, which there is. So I think, depending on what you do with the sun direction, probably darkening this down, or being able to separate this wall from this side would be pretty important, just in terms of understanding the space that we're in. But yeah, keep going. I think keep looking for the right key direction. I think that's probably the most important part of this image and most images is where is my key coming from, and then everything else can sort of support that decision. So yeah, great job. The next one is from Tanya on the Discord. So you have this render of this pool, which is looking nice. This is the reference that you gave for what you're shooting for. I think you've done a really good job with how everything's laid out here. I think a couple things that I noticed that can maybe help you with this. I think to me this image feels a little bit small, like it looks a little bit miniature maybe. So I'm trying to think of things we can do to sort of increase the scale and increase the depth of the image. One thing that we're seeing is this black sign is more black than anything really in the foreground. It's competing with like these darks over here. This is just as dark as that. Generally, you know, for film images and for really any sort of photography or anything like that, you want to feel those darks getting lighter as the atmospheric perspective comes in. Especially in a place like this where there's water, you know, it would be very common for this sort of to have less contrast than things in the foreground, and that's a lot of what you have to play to show depth in the image. So I think getting some atmosphere in here into your image will really help. You can see, you know, it's happening in a lot of these reference images that you gave. You can see how like contrasty these lane lines are in the foreground versus in the background. Like everything's pretty hazy and light, and it really makes the image feel deeper. And even though it sort of seems to be a longer-ish lens, same thing here. I don't know if this is an AI. It looks a little AI, but same idea is, you know, the volume is really helping to push back this part of the building, and then also, you know, the other thing that it'll give you is these nice God rays coming in, which I think would look really nice in your render, to have, you know, God rays coming in through these windows, volumetric rays coming in through these windows, and sort of hitting, maybe not all the way across, but, you know, coming in just to sort of give it that luminous feel that a lot of your reference has. And on top of that, I think you could add some bloom, probably a comp effect to some of these areas, and, you know, that'll kind of give you what you're looking for in this image, where the lights feel like, you know, these hot spots feel like they're really glowing. That could be a nice feel as well. But yeah, I think you have a great base to start with. I think maybe just playing with some lens effects, playing with atmosphere mainly, would really help bring this image along. But great job. Cool. This one is from Lindsay on the Discord. This is looking really nice. I think you've captured, I think you've captured the sort of early morning, misty morning feel really well in your image. And, you know, it looks simple, but I think it's not easy to do what you've done. So great job on that. It feels like, you know, I get the same emotion looking at this picture that I do looking at your image. So great job with that. I think there's a couple things that we can do to sort of bring it a little bit closer to your reference and make it a little bit more, punch it up a little bit more. I think, you know, your atmosphere looks nice. I think it's, when compared to how it's stepping back in space here, you know, where the foreground elements, and it's not even that close to camera here, but, you know, here, as you go back, you can see how gradually light the darks get. To me, I think this building is feeling like it's being pushed back a little bit too much, when in comparison to how gradual it is going backwards here. It seems like, you know, maybe your atmosphere really starts right here rather than being a gradual, you know, we're seeing through layers of atmosphere. So I think taking the atmosphere down on this building, or sort of making it a little bit more gradual as it goes back, would really help, help with scale and help with the image overall. I think also one of the main things that's missing is there's all these really nice like sun glints on the ground here that's making it feel a little bit, you know, kind of magical. Um, I think you're missing that. I think it's because these buildings are in the way. You can't get the sun low enough to really hit here, which I totally understand. But, you know, it might be worth trying to fake it a little bit, like maybe putting a light that is only hitting the floor and isolating it just to the speck. Might be kind of interesting, like getting some hot spots on the ground. And, you know, I see you change the material of the ground to make it wet. You can utilize that by sort of getting some hotter spots of sunlight, or what we want to look like sunlight, on the ground. That might be kind of nice. I think the main thing, you know, in comparison to the reference image, is how bright the sky fill is on this image. And I think for you, your image is, your sky fill is not super bright. Like it's getting a little bit gray and dark down here, where you would expect, you know, the sky dome is pretty bright. You would expect the light to be coming in and sort of lighting up the ground quite a bit more. So I think increasing that sort of soft top-down light would really do a lot to get you closer to this reference. I think that'll really give some color to the shadows, make it feel a little bit richer. And like, you know, these areas are starting to look a little bit dingy. So getting some color in there would be nice. The last thing is, you know, this kind of goes along with the sky dome comment, but I think some of these forward-facing planes, this one and this one, are feeling a little bit bright and a little bit green. And it's, to me, it's sort of clashing with that blue, nice blue sky that you have. I don't know if it's like an IBL that you're using or something like that, but I would probably, when you increase that top-down light, probably cool down, like less green, whatever is causing these, and then maybe even darkening them so we can feel this transition and feel this plane change here. That might kind of help solidify the image a little bit more. But great job. I think the feeling is there. I think it's just adding some lights to sort of get closer to what you're going for with the reference. But awesome, thank you. This one is from Mustafa on the Discord. I really like what you've done here. I think, you know, the way you've set things up, I think it's a great start. I think the main thing with this is your light source here, the way that it's affecting the volume just feels a little bit too perfect and too even. Whereas I pulled some reference. This one's from Bridge of Spies, and this one is from Molly's Game. You can see, you know, it's kind of hazy in this room like it is in your room, but the actual influence of these lights is not that perfect and not that wide. Like here as well, you can see it's hazy, but, you know, they're kind of, it is spreading, but it's not, it's a lot softer than what you have. And I think what that will do is, you know, if you can kind of contain the strongest parts of this volumetric effect to this area, and, you know, you could still have some of it, but I think I wouldn't make it quite as perfect. I would have it sort of like be strongest, closest to the light source, and then fade off quite quickly. That'll give you a little bit more contrast in the face, right? I think the face is probably the first thing we want to look at in this image, and then maybe the second read is these cards. I mean, you have an advantage in that, like, humans will just look at a face first, naturally, but I think if you're able to sort of strengthen that read by increasing contrast on the face, I think that'll help quite a bit. So removing some of that volume, I think will really do that for you. And I think, you know, it also gets some more darks in the image. I think the main dark area in your image right now is like this part, and it kind of, I'm not really sure what's going on, like what he's holding. You know, I would kind of wish to see some more information down here just a little bit. So I think once you get that volumetric light under control, you can sort of try to put a little bit of light on whatever this is, just so we're not seeing like just this hole in the image. And I think there's also an opportunity to have a little bit more interest in the background. Right now the volumetrics is just overwhelming everything, but he sort of looks like he's floating in a void right now with just these two porthole windows. I think, you know, there's an opportunity to sort of maybe hit the wall with a little bit of light, and sort of ground this character in an environment. I think that might help. But yeah, great job. I think you've done a nice job sort of composing this so that you can read his eyes. Maybe these transitions are a little bit too hard, so you might want to soften out the light a little bit. But yeah, I think decreasing the effective volumetric I think would go a long way. One other thing is this rim light you have here on the character. To me, it feels like this light is brighter than this light. This light seems fairly dim. This rim is almost, it is stronger than what this light is. If you want to play the rim from this side, which I think compositionally is probably a better idea, maybe this window needs to be brighter. And then also I would want the rim to be a little bit wider. Like right now it's just this sharp line, and it can be mistaken for like a matte line or something like that. So having the rim spill a little bit more onto the head, onto the back of the head, and sort of softly transition out to the shadow might be kind of interesting. But yeah, I think right now it just doesn't feel motivated enough by this dim light source. So yeah, hopefully that helps. I'm looking forward to seeing the next iteration. Thanks. That's not the one I wanted. Okay, this one is from Erica. We just looked at this a few days ago, but you've already turned around the notes, which is awesome. I think my eye is going more towards him, which is great. And you've kind of reined in where the light's hitting and everything like that. So it does feel more focused than it used to. I think in terms of next steps, you know, it's in a great place. I think now you need to ask yourself, like, what are you hoping to, like, is this image in your mind supposed to be in a film, or, you know, what is the context of this image? I think if it's gonna be, if you're going for more, you know, cinematic lighting, theatrical lighting, I might try to even focus even more on the subject here. I can imagine, you know, the camera pushing in a little bit on this character, and I think focusing it more, even more on here. You can give that a try. Maybe adding some volumetrics, just to feel this lamp glow a little bit, might be helpful to sort of soften out what's going on behind the lamp and bring a little bit more coziness to the vibe here. And then, you know, I do know you have these big windows, so maybe it wouldn't go quite as dark, but I think you can go darker around the edges of the image. Maybe not on the window, but, like, you know, going darker here, whether it's just like a 2D vignette or something like that, could just give us a little bit more focus on him. I think in film shots aren't very long. You're not looking at it for a long time. You really want to be able to guide the eye to where you want them to look at. I think some nitpicky things maybe is these leaves and this cactus. There's just little hits on them that feel a little bit distracting. It's, I want to look at him, but it's so close to all this like little detail here. So maybe not dimming out the lamp and not hitting these plants quite as much with the lamp could help with that, just to help them sit back a little bit more. I think his face is looking pretty good. I feel like there's still some room maybe to get a little bit darker shadows on his shadow side. Yeah, like on the forward-facing planes, you have some bounce here, which is looking pretty nice. Maybe it's a little bit too bright, because I think this plane change from his chin, from the front of his chin to the bottom of his chin, we might be losing that a little bit. So I would probably take the bounce that's hitting his face down slightly. But yeah, I think you're in a great place. I think it's just small stuff now that's really plussing the image. And yeah, I mean, I was wondering if you have atmosphere for this lamp, it could be good to sort of have that also to bring up the darks of this bookshelf, just to decrease the contrast between these light parts and the dark parts. This is almost the most contrasty part of the frame right now. I think a little bit of atmosphere might help lift it a little bit, just so it's not, pulling focus quite so much. But yeah, great job on this. I think, oh, one more thing, actually, I just thought of. This paper, this is not as much a lighting thing as it is a materials thing, but it does look a little white for a newspaper. I think, I don't mind how contrasty it is as a element in the frame, but I think as a newspaper, maybe you would want to gray it up and warm it up just slightly on the material if you have control over that. That might just make it feel a little bit more natural. But yeah, great job on this. Keep going. Thanks. All right, this last one is from Shadow Crayon on the Discord. So you have this character and this reference as well. So yeah, I saw the last image that you put on the Discord. I think this is an improvement, so great job on that. There's a couple things that I wanted to point out that you might want to consider. I think this key light on the character is feeling, I think, a little bit too yellow, quite a bit too yellow and acidic. So it's really making this feel like a acid green, and then, it looks like this character's sweater is blue, but it's so yellow it's making it green like this, and it almost looks like this character's wearing a half green, half blue sweater. So I would, even looking at this reference, I would definitely neutralize the color of this key a little bit, closer to white, not all the way white, but warm white. I think that will kind of bring back local color of the sweater, as well as get you a little bit closer to how this is looking here. I think your light might be a little bit too low as well, judging from where the speck is and how it's hitting the character. I think here it's probably, I don't know, pretty side lit, maybe slightly down. I think yours is a little bit too low, so bringing it up to sort of hit the character like this would probably help you quite a bit. I think your rim light, the color is looking pretty good. I think it's just a little bit too on the side of the character, whereas I would want it to be slightly more to the back, behind the character. And the reason for that, to me at least, is it feels like this blue area and this yellow area of the face is almost even. And, you know, I realize it's kind of like that here as well, but I think the majority of the face is sort of dominated by warmth here, and then the blue light is like a kicker to sort of accent those planes of the face. I think I would like to see it a little bit tighter on yours, and, you know, maybe if you move it behind a little bit more, you'll get, you know, a little bit tighter of a shape that doesn't spill so far from left to right onto the character, and then you can really allow that key light to be the main source of light for the character. But yeah, keep going. I think you're in a good spot. I think it's just making some small adjustments to really get this going forward and looking more like this. But awesome job. Keep going. I look forward to seeing progress. Thanks, everybody.